Thank you. Get started.
All right, yeah. All right, don't have a lot on here today. Got 2 proclamations and again, 5 people on all, at least 3 on or 4 on sustainability. Page 2 is just usual bids and public improvements. Page 3, number 1, this is $350,000 for clubhouse repairs at Tex Consolver and drainage system repairs at McDonald. And these are from available funds in the Gulf Fund that were generated last year.
Real quick, Tex is not in District 5.
That's right.
Oh, did they put it in 5?
It's in District 4.
Yeah.
They moved it.
I lost Auburn Hills. I never gained.
Yeah, you didn't pick up another on top of that. Yep. Okay. Number 2 is a renewal of a water service agreement with Rose Hill. This is a 20-year extension with an estimated minimum revenue to the city of about $153,000. Number 3 is, it really codifies a deal that was done last year with Rural Water District 5 to serve a subdivision at 21st Street North and 143rd Street East.
I'm super excited to see this on here because we went and saw them in October of last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of great work from staff went into this, so I'm grateful.
Good compromise on it. That's all I have on page 3. Page 4 is an ordinance being brought forward prohibiting discrimination and providing a definition for protected class that would be covered under the ordinance.
Hey, Bob, that's an update to an ordinance, right? To our ordinance?
Well, Jennifer can help me here. I don't think the ordinance is in place anymore. What it does is it's an extension of what our HR policies are. I believe that's the case. Jennifer?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So there's not an ordinance already. This is
No, there
a
used to be.
brand new ordinance.
Yes, that's correct.
This is one that's repealed in 99.
So
Yeah.
I have some questions. Is
Yeah.
that okay? So under the analysis portion, there's some terms that maybe aren't in my everyday vernacular, such as familial status, genetic information. Will there be further definition of what that actually means? And then last year on July 3rd, when we had the mask ordinance, we had a really robust discussion of whether or not there had to be a penalty, if you will, if you violate. And because we just wanted it to be education if people didn't wear a mask. And the reason I'm recalling that is because I remember clearly legal said if we have a city ordinance, you have to have a penalty. And this is an ordinance, but I don't see a penalty.
Right. Jennifer's prepared to address your second question. And I don't know that there have been any definitions advanced regarding any of the classes or any of the terms that are in the protected class.
I mean, I just don't know what a couple of those would even mean or be relevant.
Jennifer, do you want
Yes.
to talk about?
On the definitions of those terms, they would follow federal law. They're defined in federal law, most of those terms. Familial status, genetic information, for the definition.
On the issue of penalty?
On the issue of penalty, here, if for the mask ordinance, we said to resolve the infraction, there needs to be a given penalty, some type of a way of fine pay or something. So we had created an infraction in that case. There was a violation part of the ordinance, and so we had to have some form of identified penalty. And that is what we're remembering. This does not create a violation. This is more a statement of prohibition of discrimination. So it doesn't have that violation enforcement.
And then, so let's say that an employee says that I feel like I've been discriminated because of my age or disability, and they refer to this, what happens?
Under our employees, we would follow our personnel policies for employees. Or that would be an HR issue for city employees.
So this extends to us as a council?
This prohibits discrimination in 3 cases in the city of Wichita under prohibition by anybody, any employer in employment, in public accommodations, and in housing.
So
It's making a statement that it's illegal in the city of Wichita to
So let's say that Tuttle Inc., the coolest company in Wichita, by the way, we violate this, which would not be cool, but what happens? I mean, first of all, I guess, how will we even get the word out to the city and to employers that they now have a new rule? I mean, how many, we don't even know what all the businesses are in Wichita, let alone how we get the word out that they could potentially be violating something they don't even know exists.
This ordinance is drafted does not have an enforcement provision, it does not.
So this is a statement of policy. And Jennifer, I had asked her also, after talking to Councilmember Blubaugh, about the section that's referenced in the last paragraph of background. And Jennifer can talk about that as well. That will be the only place where there's a possibility there'd be a city enforcement at this time. And that's not a section that we have utilized because it's difficult to enforce in the courts.
I
But
would
it's,
say that it is similar to the city of Chica's ordinance, which was adopted in the that language in the city is also in the city of Chica's ordinance.
Similar to what, Jennifer? I'm sorry.
It's similar to the city of Chica's ordinance.
Oh.
So, and again, I'm just asking questions, I'm not saying I'm going to be opposed, but it almost seems to me like we would need a rollout plan or a communication plan for this prior to, I don't know about prior for it coming to us, but it just seems like kind of ready, fire, aim. You know, we don't really have a plan for how we're going to communicate this.
Right.
And then, and not only to the employers or the others, but to the employees, to the people that it could potentially affect.
By way of background, in the early 70s, the city had a civil rights board, and there was an enforcement mechanism for discrimination. That was repealed in 1999, I believe. So in that case, there was an enforcement, there was provisions, there was a commission that was established to provide enforcement mechanisms.
So we know the history on why it was repealed? In 99? Can we find that?
You know, we've tried to find that. We think it was part of a larger restructuring of boards and commissions. We think there was also just lack of communication between the boards and council concerns and constituents. I'm not sure if it was funded. It was apparently not very active.
we looked, yeah, Jennifer, we did look at that at one point because this came up early in my time here. And Jennifer's right, it was, as I remember, it was part of a overhaul of the code and a review of all the boards and commissions. And the fact that there was a state human rights commission that was actively involved in this area, there was a feeling that they were better equipped, both from a staffing standpoint as well as their ability to investigate the depth of their investigation process. So it was felt to be duplicative, is my understanding. Again, obviously I wasn't here at the time, but that's my understanding of the history.
Hey, Bob, this is Jeff. Trying to understand here some of the identity things. Is that, where does the identity, where like identity in science might not add up? Is that age? Is that race? Is that gender? What are we looking at here on this policy?
Yeah, Jeff, I think that goes along with the question that Councilmember Tuttle asked, and I think what we'll do is between now and Tuesday, we'll track down the federal definitions for each of the categories that are listed under protected class, and hopefully
Okay.
that will help.
Some specific unintended consequences I'm thinking about. You know, if there's a 30-year-old employee that wants to identify as 62 and take advantage of the city's pension program, how do we address issues like that?
Okay.
I'd go younger, not old. So can I ask, I'm sorry, and I can save some of these for the bench, but just because it's in my mind, and could we not have a statement or a policy statement? An ordinance seems odd to me when it's, I don't know, maybe I just need to marinate on it a little bit, but I'm trying to figure out the purpose of the ordinance when there's no penalty.
I agree with Councilwoman Tuttle that if there's, why are we creating an ordinance that doesn't have a penalty?
It seems aspirational, not,
Yeah, it seems statemental.
yeah,
however you
which is
want-
great.
yeah,
I mean, I think
yeah.
we should be
Yes.
making a statement and being a role model and a resource, but I'm just trying to figure out how do we end the it seems like it's gonna be confusing, if we put something out there for the public, if they don't really understand what they're supposed to do with it.
Jennifer, do we have other options besides an ordinance?
Yes.
You probably need to use a mic,
Yeah.
Jennifer, because I'm here. People can't hear you.
Yeah.
The question was, do we have other options besides an ordinance? And the answer is yes, an ordinance is the way it was requested, but it could be a resolution, it could be an adoption
That makes the
in
most
other
sense.
forms.
Okay. Could be a resolution.
Could we potentially find out what the penalties were back in '99 when that other ordinance was in effect?
We can look for that, but I'm not confident that we will get that level of detail based on our prior research hitting some walls, but we'll look for that.
And
You can
Topeka-
also look at the state agency, Kansas Human Rights Commission, that does enforce some of these. There are some penalties set forth in statute that we can look at in terms of how that agency enforces it.
You mentioned Topeka, is theirs is codified as an ordinance as well?
Yes,
Okay.
With no penalties?
yes.
Okay, so it looks just pretty much like this,
Yes.
is what you're saying? Okay.
Vice Mayor, do you want to talk about how this came forward?
Yeah, I know that there have been various groups that have reached out to both the mayor and I wouldn't be surprised if they reached out to anyone else, looking to seek some protections here in the city of Wichita. The mayor, I think, asked Jennifer first, or just started looking around to see if there was any ordinances in the state of Kansas that kind of would address those issues. The state of Topeka, or the city of Topeka, the city of Topeka had something that I know we looked at quite a bit in seeking to add those protections for, I know, veterans, and forget the other additions to what we had from Wichita. And then at that point, I believe the mayor was continuing to have conversations with those groups about, if this was something that was beneficial, would it work? Was there more work that needed to be done? And this seemed to be a good first step.
So Jennifer, what would be someone's remedy if they thought this, and maybe this isn't a question from the bench, but I don't understand what the remedy would be for someone if they thought they were having, they had their rights violated?
Currently, under state, the state agency is the Kansas Human Rights Commission that could enforce it, but at the city level, there is no enforcement mechanism in this ordinance.
So that's my fear. Like I said, I'm not opposed to the concept, and I applaud us for considering being role models. But so let's say that I work at, wherever in the city, and I feel like I'm being discriminated against because of my age or race or gender or color or, anything, veteran status. Who do they call at the city? Like, who's the person who reviews it? And then truly, if they make the call, we're just going to say, wow, sorry to hear that. Because we can't do anything. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Back in the 70s and 80s when this existed, there was a civil rights board that existed, and I believe it was staffed, and there was an enforcement process.
But no enforcement process, so. We would perhaps refer them to the state if they call?
That's one option. They could apply or, file a complaint under state law protection. There's the Kansas state law, which is the Kansas Acts Against Discrimination. There are various other state laws that protect those rights. Then there's the federal law for in violations of housing or employment. They could go to federal agencies like the EEOC or HUD under the Fair Housing Act or Title VII in employment. So there's state and federal agencies that do this in some areas, in most areas.
I have no idea if this is a good idea, but would it be appropriate to put those in our ordinance? to say that that's where the enforcement is?
And that's, I think, what this statement reflects, that there are agencies that currently enforce that. If the city wants to message that, it could be stated in its, wherever the city wants to state reference to Kansas Human Rights Commission or EEOC.
That's where that's in that civil rights
Or as
declared
an
section.
alternative, instead of putting that in the ordinance other than that language, what we can do is then have that information available. We could even put it on our website so that people would then know what state and federal agencies are there for the filing of complaints.
Okay.
So let's say that somebody feels like there's a violation, like I mentioned, and they get into the city's, phone tree, whatever, like, where does the call even go? Like, what department is gonna be responsible for helping to navigate them through where they should go at the state level? Is that legal? Is it?
At this point, that's not established, and I'll defer to Bob. I mean, there's a question to be answered.
I mean, because to me, that seems unfair to the residents that we would create something, but we don't have the support for them, right? I mean, we're creating an unreal expectation then that we're gonna be able to assist them, and we can't.
Well, we would have that information. I mean, so if it's a housing complaint, the housing department, if you adopt this, the housing department would have the reference information for federal and state agencies. And if it's, and then my guess is we go to the city manager's office, the mayor and council office, we make sure that those are available. But most importantly, we'd have to have a place on our website so that we could point people to that location.
Because if it's our housing department that's discriminating, that seems a lot easier than if it's, again, Tuttle Inc. or, another company that's discriminating. Yeah.
Yeah, someone's probably going to talk about being denied housing, not necessarily our housing, not public housing, but being denied housing because of they're in a protected class.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue early when the mayor first brought this up was we just couldn't find any of the old penalties, so there was no basis to go off over to what we could put together for the city of Wichita. But I have had residents come complain about this stuff, and I had to find the state agency and kind of send that link to them, so it would be beneficial to have somewhere for them to go and be able to cite an actual ordinance. So in addition to their claim, they can claim city ordinance and then take that to the state agency as well.
Well, I guess if we backed it up with what you and manager are suggesting, that there's a process, that would.
I also think, if we like this, we don't have to put it into effect immediately. I don't think we could say this could go into effect as of a certain date. That gives more time to get those resources up and all of that, so it doesn't have to be effective tomorrow, but.
That brings me some comfort, because it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't seem like we're ready to be able to help people in the way that we should if we're gonna pass something.
Yeah. Honestly, I think to your concerns, that would make more sense, because, as you said, getting the word out and everything, if we said this was effective, we'd have to do it from the bench, but effective like September 1st, that's time, or a little later, so we can get it out, get people educated, get the resources together, so.
How does this affect, I believe Kansas is a right-to-work state, right? Correct? So in terms of employment, if you're non-contract, non-unionized, you can be fired, you can be terminated for any reason.
You can be terminated for law reasons. Is so, like under the Kansas Human Rights Commission, if you're terminated based on membership in a protected class or for other federal or state protected reasons, that's an unlawful termination.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Okay. Nothing on page 5. Page 6. number 6 is a Kansas Leadership Center grant as part of their virus education and, their vaccination education and rollout program, $2,000 grant that would allow us to promote vaccinations at a gay pride event at NAFSCR Park on June 24th. There'll be a clinic at that event. That is all I have.
Any other questions on the agenda? Seeing none, have a good weekend.